Does this new MAFEX Knightfall Bane belong in your collection, or does it belong in the pit? Take a break and find out. Starting with the packaging, and the back-breaking Bane comes in a window box very similar to the MAFEX Batman, but a whole lot bigger. Side by side, you can really see what I mean. Various and sundry logos in one corner, Bane in the other, a big old picture of Bane on the side, more pictures of Bane on the back, including a step-by-step guide for how to break Batman's back. And of course, our friend the teddy bear being traumatized watching it happen. On the bottom's a bunch of legal, as well as that non-reproducible holographic sticker to let you know it's official and not a bootleg. And up top, once again, I'm stuck with some slight damage to the box from shipping. It's not as bad as Batman was. Okay, you know what? Opening it up, maybe it's actually kind of worse. That said, Medicom, as always, has designed an incredible box, though I do still think it's a missed opportunity not to lean into the Knightfall-specific branding, and for packaging, I'm giving Bane 5 points. Moving on to presentation, and Bane stands at 7¼ inches, or 18½ centimeters. Before I got him in hand, I was expecting this figure to be a lot smaller, so the fact that he's as big as he is a really nice surprise. The execution is simple without any added detail, but again, that's just straight out of the comic. That said, all the necessary details have been sculpted on. Bane has his signature luchador mask, though I would point out just a little bit of paint swap here. I do like the zipper running down the back. Pay attention to that seam running down the side, by the way, because we're going to come back to that in playability. And then, of course, we have the apparatus for his venom back here. That hose runs all the way down to his glove, with his control panel here. His musculature is well sculpted. Holy traps, Batman! And the skin has actually been lightly shaded. Not only that, but there's a faint stamping of hair running down his arms. I can't tell if there's actually shading in the clothing. It kinda looks like there is. Either way, instead of black, it's just a very, very dark gray, and the boots are nice and glossy. I also appreciate that the laces have been painted to help them stand out. Peeking underneath the boots, and he's been given some nice tread. As usual, he doesn't have any peg holes, which is one of the things I'm not that crazy about with MAFEX. Otherwise, from a visual standpoint, there are only two things about this figure I don't like. For whatever reason, the knees have been given all sorts of extra craggy texture. There's nothing about the sculpt that suggests that these are supposed to be knee pads, so instead they're just visual distractions. Otherwise, my only other issue is the shoulders. In my Knight Crusader Batman video, I talked about how gappy they are, and here that's even more evident. I understand that they're farther away from the body so as to not interfere with articulation, but in a static pose it looks really unnatural. In that aspect, it kind of reminds me of an old Toy Biz Marvel legend, which definitely is not the compliment that it once was. This figure came at a time when I was starting to lose my luster with MAFEX in general, and I've gotta say it's kind of won me back. I do still feel the shoulders would look better if they were just a bit more inlaid. The wrinkly knees are a weird choice, and it's always frustrating when the paint on a figure this expensive isn't absolutely pristine. Even so, the good more than outweighs the bad, so for presentation, I'm giving Bane 4 points. Moving on to posability, and for a character as bulky as Bane, I'm honestly really impressed with what MAFEX has pulled off here. From the top, and as always, his head is on a dumbbell joint. I have to be careful because I don't want to break any of this. MAFEX does give a little extra bend in the barbell to add some range. There's also a ball joint at the base of the neck. Using all his articulation, and Bane can watch the fire rise this high and down into the pit this low. He's also got a wonderful amount of tilt, and while he can't look all the way around because of the hoses, he can look side to side. Moving down, he can raise his arm this high. This, of course, is aided by that wibbly-wobbly rotator cuff. He also has complete rotation. Again, though, just mind the hose. And then traveling down the arms, we've got bicep swivel, pinless double-jointed elbows with a pretty good bend considering how thick they are, and then ball-jointed pegs at the wrist. They can swivel and hinge in any direction. Just keep in mind that this thick glove does get a little bit in the way. Shifting to the torso, and Bane has a diaphragm joint and what I suspect is a ball-jointed waist. He can arch back this far, which given his girth is pretty impressive. You might need to see a doctor about this hernia though. For real, just be warned, this is pretty gappy. But he can hunch forward this far, which is frankly incredible. McFarlane Toys, I'm looking at you. As you'd expect, he also gets a phenomenal amount of tilt, and of course twist. The only issue with this kind of articulation is it does break up the sculpt, which is why for characters like this I'd normally prefer an ab crunch. But at the same time, it's hard to argue with the results when you have this kind of range. Below the big silver belt, and Bane has ball jointed hips. On their own, they can
can kick this high, but they also have drop-down hinges, giving Bane an extra high kick. They also give him a near-perfect split. Similar to a DC Multiverse, MAFEX don't have thigh cut, but they do have twist in the hip, and Bane's is pretty good. He also has a pinless double-jointed knee with a shockingly deep bend, and lest we forget wrinkly kneecaps. That said though, and Bane does have toticulation and ankles that can swivel, hinge, and while not that deeply, pivot. Bulky characters are notoriously challenging to articulate, but Medicom has done a spectacular job. For posability, I'm giving Bane 5 points. Moving on to playability, and this Bane is a bit handsy. For when he wants to throw hands, Bane comes preloaded with fists. He also comes with a pair of flight hands. Of course, in Bane's case, I assume that they're meant for karate chopping. Also, for laying on people's shoulders when he asks them if they feel in charge. Bane also has a pair of pointing hands. These are useful for when he needs to push the button to juice himself up with more venom, or for when he wants to root for his favorite team before blowing up their stadium. They're also pretty handy for when running into people at parties. That said, Bane does have a pair of relaxed hands. The question is, does Bane ever relax? And then alternately, Bane has a pair of more grippy hands, as well as open hands. These, of course, are the ones you're going to want for recreating the breaking of Batman's back, and I've got to admit, not only is this Bane nice and articulated for it, you can actually pull it off without the aid of a figure stand. That's a surprise I did not expect. Speaking of surprises, remember that seam I mentioned earlier running down the side of the mask? Since Bane's head isn't swappable, they made his face swappable. So in addition to the face we've been looking at throughout the video, he also has this one with smaller eyes and a wider mouth area. Alas, it also does have its own paint slot. Otherwise, and from a design point of view, I do think I kinda like this one better, but both of them are very similar and very well done. Lastly, and Bane comes with the signature MAFEX flight stand. That being the case though, Bane is kinda too heavy for it. It's fine for poses like this though. Fortunately, if you want to elevate Bane, we do have one of these. Hurry up and follow me, for I will soon be gone. I'm flying. Of course, playability is more than just flight stands and swappable faces. It's also about how well your figure plays with others. Beginning with just a few other 6 and 7 inch scale comic style Banes, and here's Legends of the Dark Knight by Kenner. Next up, and this was either part of the 2003 Batman series by Mattel or the DC Superheroes line that came right after. Overall, I always like this one, except for the fact that they have him standing in low horse. Otherwise, and here's the DC Multiverse Megafig. As for some Batman comparisons, and here's Knight Crusader by MAFEX. But from smallest to largest, and for a few other lines, and here's the 2003 series by Mattel, the Rebirth style DC Icons version. I think these two look great together. And then here we have Detective Batman from DC Universe Classics, a Secret Files Batman by DC Direct, Knightfall Batman from DC Essentials, still missing his left hand, the DC vs. Dark Horse 2-pack version by NECA. Thanks to the body shading, these two look pretty good together as well. And then here we have Knightfall by DC Multiverse. If you want Bane to just be a big dude and not like a 15-foot tall monster, I do think you could get away with this. Beyond that though, and here we have the Walmart exclusive variant of Detective Comics 1000, and Year 2 Batman, who's definitely too big for this Bane. To see how Bane scales with some other MAFEX Batman villains, and here we have the Gotham City Sirens and Hush. That said, for those wondering how this Bane might look in their DC Universe Classics collection, here he is with a few regular-sized villains, but for a couple of larger villains, here's Clayface and Man-Bat. For those hoping to use this Bane in their DC Multiverse collection, that's gonna be a bit trickier, but not impossible. You will probably want to find some ways of elevating him though. For a relative scale comparison, here's Bane with Pizza Spidey and the Spectacular Spider-Man, and as always, here he is with Stealth Iron Man. I would tell you I'll break you, but it appears I'm too late. Between the flight stand, swappable face, and 10 extra hands, yeah, this thing is pretty well packed. For playability, I'm giving Bane 5 points. This leaves us with nothing left to discuss but the price. I got mine for about $78 plus $20-ish shipping from HobbyLink Japan, and while he does seem to be sold out right now from all the usual suspects, I am seeing him online averaging between $100 to $130. He's a spectacular piece, and I'm very glad that I got him, but if you're going to add him to your collection, I do recommend shopping around. Just because you want somebody to break your bat doesn't mean you need to break the bank. Factoring in that it's an import, and for price, I'm giving Bane 5 points, averaging out to a grand total of 4.8 out of 5. Coming soon to an off-Broadway theater near you, a new telling of the timeless classic by James M. Barrie, Peter Pan, starring Bane. I have a place where dreams are born, and time was never planned. It's not on any chart, you must find it in your heart. The Pit! If you like this video, check out one of these. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be back again real soon, but until then, play nice and have fun.